Welcome everybody to this Democrats Abroad webinar. Democrats Abroad is the official Democratic Party organization for the millions of Americans living outside the United States. Our members live in more than 190 countries around the globe and vote in every state and congressional district in the US, including the great state of Wisconsin. Every election year, Democrats Abroad members around the world mail back their ballots to nearly every county in Wisconsin. Our organization provides resources and information on an ongoing basis to help Wisconsinites stay connected to their home state, including assistance with voter registration and absentee ballots, as well as updates on state and local news and races. Thanks to federal UOCAVA law, the right to vote extends to any American citizen in the world, regardless of how long they've lived overseas. In 2020, Wisconsin had more than 20,000 uniformed and overseas absentee citizens registered to vote. Just over 14,000 were able to vote successfully. Our home state does not make voting easy for us. In state and local elections, only those overseas Wisconsin voters who have marked intend to return on their ballot request will receive a ballot. That means that many overseas Wisconsinites whose return is uncertain are disenfranchised in state elections, such as the one on April 1. Nevertheless, we remain engaged and passionate about the future of our country and our state. Each vote is a declaration of hope and a testament to our belief in a better tomorrow. Whether or not you are eligible to vote in this election, we believe it is vital to be informed of the stakes and the issues, and that is why we are so pleased to bring this event to you today. And please stick around after our speaker, as our voter assistance team will help to answer your questions about voting. And now I'm going to turn the microphone over to the Global Chair of Democrats Abroad, Martha McDevitt-Pugh, who will introduce our speaker.
Thank you very much, Annie. And I'm Martha McDevitt-Pugh. I'm a California voter and I live in the Netherlands, and I'm the International Chair of Democrats Abroad, and really great to have everybody here with us today, and especially our special guest, Judge Susan Crawford. She grew up in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, and that's the place you cheeseheads apparently know as the home of Leinenkugel beer. And Susan received a bachelor's degree from Lawrence University and a law degree from the University of Iowa. She's currently serving as the Dane County Circuit Court Judge, where she has presided over tough trials, including homicide, sexual assault, and domestic violence cases. She has always prioritized following the law and getting the facts right in every case to ensure everyone appearing in her courtroom receives a fair and impartial trial. Prior to this role, Judge Crawford worked as an Assistant Attorney General for the Wisconsin Department of Justice, as Chief Legal Counsel to Democratic Governor Jim Doyle, and for numerous state agencies. She also previously worked as an attorney specializing in civil rights, labor law, and government matters. Her rulings have been designated liberal by the mainstream media, particularly those cases involving voting rights, labor issues, and the administrative law. In media interviews and in meetings with the public, however, Judge Crawford stresses the fair and common sense nature of her rulings. And it is an incredible honor to have her with us here today. So please welcome Judge Susan Crawford. And Judge Crawford, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Martha, and thank you, Annie, for getting this organized for today. And I appreciate everyone participating in this Zoom, wherever you are and whatever time it is where you are. This really worked out well for our schedule, so I'm glad that you're making the time today. So I'm going to speak a bit, fill in a few more details about my background and why I'm running for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, tell you a little bit about the dynamics of this race, and then I think we'll have time to answer a few questions as well. So the election is coming up soon, April 1st. That is just 5 weeks away from Tuesday. So, we are really getting into the final weeks of this campaign. And the stakes are very high. This election is going to determine the future of our state. It's going to have national implications. and it will certainly affect the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Wisconsinites. That's really why I'm running. I have spent my career fighting to protect the rights of Wisconsinites under our laws and under our Constitution. And I have pledged to be fair and impartial on the Wisconsin Supreme Court and make sure that I make common sense decisions that really keep Wisconsin residents in the center of my decision making. I want to always make sure that the law is being applied in the way that protects the rights of citizens. I don't make decisions on abstract principles. I make them based on the actual impact of the cases on people's lives. My opponent in this race is a longtime partisan politician with very extreme views, and he's running this race as a partisan politician would, announcing his positions on cases pending before the Wisconsin Supreme Court in violation of our judicial code in Wisconsin, and is clearly pushing a political agenda in this race. So the stakes are high because in part this is about protecting the fairness and impartiality of the Wisconsin Supreme Court from somebody who wants to politicize the court, politicize our Constitution, and who has a long history of working to take rights away from Wisconsinites. So again, I'm just pleased that all of you are here and that you're engaged in democracy in Wisconsin, despite being many miles away from home in most instances. As Martha introduced me, I grew up in Chippewa Falls, western Wisconsin. I was one of 4 kids there, and my dad was an engineer who got his degree from UW-Madison after serving in Korea, so went to college on the GI Bill. My mom grew up in Monroe, Wisconsin. She was a 3rd-generation Wisconsinite, and my great-grandfather started our family history in Wisconsin when he opened a barber shop on the square in Monroe, Wisconsin back in the 1860s. So I have some deep roots in this state. And, you know, growing up, my parents taught me the value of hard work and honesty and integrity and standing up for what you believe in. I am now a parent myself. My husband and I have raised our 2 kids here in Wisconsin, in Madison, with those same values. So I'm proud to be a Wisconsinite, proud to have worked throughout my legal career for Wisconsinites and to advance the protections under our laws and under our Constitution here. I started my career as a prosecutor at the Wisconsin Department of Justice. I was prosecuting the toughest felony cases all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Made my first appearance in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court back in 1998. And I've always, in that role, worked to get it right and work for justice. And in part, that means that when people commit serious crimes, when they hurt somebody, that they are taken out of the communities in order to keep us safe. But also if big corporations have hurt our communities, that they also are held accountable. And I also believe that victims of crime deserve to have their rights protected and upheld in our justice system. Later in my career, I served in a number of different roles in state government, again, working to uphold our laws and protect the rights of Wisconsinites under them. So I worked in a number of different state agencies in leadership positions and ultimately as chief legal counsel in the office of Governor Jim Doyle. Then after a change in administration, Scott Walker came into the governor's office. I decided to leave state government and joined a private law firm in Madison and worked hard to protect the rights of Wisconsinites in our courts. And in that period of time, often I was working to protect people after the government had taken rights away from people. So I represented public school teachers in our courts after Scott Walker and the Republican legislature took away their rights in the workplace in Act 10. Maybe some of you remember the name of that law, still in the headlines today. I also worked for Planned Parenthood and their doctors in our courts to protect their right to provide healthcare services to women. One of those cases is actually called Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin versus Brad Schimmel So my opponent was the Attorney General and was on the other side defending those laws that restricted women's access to health care and threatened doctors with felony prosecutions for providing health care to women. So I'm happy to say we prevailed in that case. And I also worked for voting rights. Wisconsin has some of the strictest voting laws in the country, including a very strict voter ID law. Annie spoke a little bit about some of the hoops and obstacles that those living overseas have to circumvent in order to just exercise your right to vote. So I'm proud of the work that I did in that case because we, through litigation, pushed the Walker administration and ultimately the legislature to make changes to ensure that every eligible voter in Wisconsin can exercise their right to vote, that they can get the IDs that they need in time for elections and without having to pay anything, which I think is really important. Now, as a judge, I just work hard every day to uphold our laws and our Constitution in my courtroom. And my goal is always that everyone who comes into my courtroom, whether they win or lose their case, leaves feeling that the judge treated them with respect and that they got their day in court. I think Wisconsinites expect that and deserve that from their judiciary. And that's what kind of justice I plan to be on the Wisconsin Supreme Court as well. I'm going to talk briefly about my opponent now to give you a better sense of what he's about and what he has spent his career doing. He's always been focused on partisanship, politics, and self-promotion, none of which are values that we need on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. As a partisan politician, he tried to restrict women's access to reproductive health care. He then and even now supports an 1849 law that is still on the books in Wisconsin that would operate as a criminal ban of nearly all abortions in Wisconsin if it were to go into effect. That law is currently before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Brad Schimmel has openly said he thinks it is A-OK, nothing wrong with that law, and it should be fully enforced. And as Attorney General, he specifically hired lawyers into new positions in Wisconsin that he asked the legislature for, who were fighting to restrict abortion rights in Wisconsin. And not only that, but one of those attorneys was part of a national conservative effort to develop the legal strategy to overturn Roe versus Wade. Brad Schimmel's Department of Justice was even getting involved in litigation in other states besides Wisconsin to try to restrict women's access to reproductive health care services. So he has a long and pretty terrible record on that issue. And it's not the only way he has let down Wisconsin women and families. As Attorney General, he let thousands of sexual assault kits go untested for years. A sexual assault kit, for those of you not familiar with that term, is the evidence that's collected during an examination of the crime scene after a sexual assault occurs. And the crime scene primarily is the victim's body. So the victim undergoes a very intrusive examination by a nurse. That evidence is collected and put in a kit for later DNA testing. At the time that Brad Schimmel took office as Attorney General, a backlog of over 6,000 of those kits that were untested had been identified. Staff at the Department of Justice were urging him to go to the legislature to seek funding to get that backlog addressed, and he refused to do it. He shooed the staff away and told them that they should apply for federal grants to get some funding to get those tested. And as a result, in a period of over 2 years, only 9 kits out of that backlog of over 6,000 were tested. So the victims in those cases, primarily women and children who had been sexually assaulted, had justice delayed. And justice delayed is justice denied. Brad Schimmel, at the same time, he was not protecting women and was actively working to take rights away from women, was wasting taxpayer dollars on things like a legal challenge to the Affordable Care Act, which, if it had been successful, would have resulted in tens of thousands of Wisconsinites losing access to their health insurance coverage. He was also one of the only attorneys general in the country who refused to get our state signed up to a national lawsuit to hold the opioid manufacturers accountable after they flooded our communities with addictive drugs that destroyed so many people and so many families in Wisconsin. He was doing nothing with the opioid epidemic while at the same time taking more campaign contributions from the pharmaceutical industry than just about any other candidate has in Wisconsin. So that's Brad Schimmel. He's always going to put his extreme politics ahead of being a fair and impartial member of the court, and he's doing the same thing today. He has hitched his wagon to none other than Elon Musk, who is now pouring millions of dollars into this race in attack ads against me. And why is Elon Musk doing that? Well, he thinks he can buy a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And Brad Schimmel is a willing customer. He has always had justice up for sale. So that's what we are up against in this race. We don't need that kind of extremism and that kind of partisanship on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And I'm counting on people like you to get the word out and to make sure that you exercise your right to vote in this election on or before April 1st to make the right choice here for our state. And with that, I'm going to turn things back over to, I don't know, Annie, if it's you who is going to preside over the questions, but I'd be happy to answer a few questions.
Great, thank you so much. You've sort of covered some of the terrain that we had hoped to ask you about, but we're going to go with these questions anyway, because I want to give you a chance to go maybe a little bit more into depth on some of these really important issues. So Liz has the first question for you.
Hi, Judge Crawford. Thanks for being here with us today. And I just want to say thank you for working to visit all of the 72 counties in Wisconsin. Now, with just under 40 days left until Election Day, we'd like to know how campaigning in 2025 differs from past years and how that might affect Wisconsin's judiciary.
Yeah. A little tough for me to say how it compares to past years, just because I was not immediately involved in past year's elections. But I think that the political climate we are in right now is very different from what we've seen in previous judicial elections in Wisconsin. There was a huge judicial election back in 2023 when Janet Protasewicz was elected to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That similarly attracted a lot of national attention, and it was for a spring election, was a high turnout election in Wisconsin. I think the difference in between that race and this race is, first of all, my opponent makes Janet Protasewicz's opponent, Dan Kelly, look like a moderate in comparison. He is much more right wing, much more sharply partisan, and just willing to do anything to win a race from a political standpoint. We have seen him doctoring images of me in campaign ads using AI technology, which is something that is against the law in Wisconsin. We called him out on it and filed an ethics complaint against him because you can't do that. He's lied repeatedly. He's got attack ads out on the airwaves right now that are just full of untruths about my record. And, that's the kind of sharp politics that you often see in other partisan races, but rarely see in a Wisconsin Supreme Court race. So that, and additionally, just the sense, I think, of chaos coming out of Washington, D.C., and the growing sense of unease, I think, that many citizens are feeling over the, kind of slash and burn approach of Elon Musk is taking to our government through, his Doge efforts. Just creates a very different political environment for this. And I think the fact that Brad Schimmel is now, selling out to Elon Musk to try to win this election is really unprecedented.
Thank you. The next question actually is one that I was going to ask. Can you explain your work in addition to what you already spoke about before, but in favor of women's reproductive health care rights and access in Wisconsin, and specifically why this continues to be such an important issue in state elections?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is that it continues to be a big issue because of what the U.S. Supreme Court just did a couple of years ago in the Dobbs decision. So Dobbs was the case that overturned Roe versus Wade. And, that I think that decision was wrongly decided. I think it was poorly reasoned. And it was the first time ever that the United States Supreme Court has reversed one of its own decisions that recognized a constitutional right. And as a result, my 23-year-old daughter does not have the same protection under our Constitution that I had when I was 23 years old. I think that is deeply wrong. And part of the sort of legal consequences of that decision is that it has spawned litigation in probably every state in the country regarding access to reproductive health care. We've seen a number of states that have had referenda placed on a statewide ballot to recognize the right to reproductive health care. We have not seen that in Wisconsin because it is not allowed under Wisconsin law. And interestingly, Brad Schimmel is trying to back away from his terrible record of opposing and trying to strip away reproductive health care rights with an ad that says, oh, this is just throwing the issue back to the states, and maybe we can have a referendum in Wisconsin on it, or the legislature can do something. Well, the legislature is not going to do anything with still a solid Republican majority in both houses, and there is no such thing as a direct action referendum in Wisconsin. It is not permitted under Wisconsin law. Governor Evers has proposed twice now that Wisconsin law be changed to allow such referenda, and the Republican majority in the legislature has no interest in taking it up because they would rather hold on to the reins of power that they currently exercise. So that's maybe a little bit different direction, Annie, in terms of the landscape for reproductive health care in Wisconsin. But that's why we're seeing all this litigation. The Wisconsin Supreme Court currently has 2 cases in front of it relating to abortion rights, and I think that litigation is going to continue. There will be more cases like that in the future. So the Supreme Court is now in a position of, being the arbiter of those kinds of deeply personal decisions that women make about their own lives and healthcare.
It's sobering.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Lola has the next question for you.
Hi, good morning, Judge Crawford. Thank you so much for your time this morning. You've already mentioned some of the differences between you and your opponent, but could you just please highlight or reiterate what you think the key differences are that we overseas voters really need to be aware of, maybe because we aren't in the everyday Wisconsin news line?
Right. I think, what it really boils down to is that, I'm a judge. I have a history of, as an attorney, of working to protect people's rights. As a judge, I've always focused on making fair and impartial decisions. And Brad Schimmel, despite holding a seat on the Waukesha Circuit Court now, he is a partisan politician to the bone and is running this race as a partisan politician would. The only reason that he is a judge is that he lost re-election for Attorney General in 2018, and that was at the same time that Scott Walker lost his bid for re-election to the governor's office. And in that lame duck period, there happened to be a vacancy on the Waukesha County Circuit Court that was awaiting an appointment by Scott Walker as governor. Brad Schimmel had not applied for that position. In fact, a dozen or so other candidates had applied for that appointment. Brad Schimmel had actually served as a reference for some of them, supported some of them for that appointment. But when they both lost re-election, Scott Walker knew that Brad Schimmel needed a job and put him on the Waukesha County Circuit Court. So, it's not something he really was aspiring to. And he was on talk radio in Wisconsin a couple of months ago, joking about how much he loves the job because, it's easy for him and he can take the afternoon off to golf or pursue his many hobbies and get home by 5 o'clock every day. And, you know, that's not the way I do the job. I actually look at it as a calling and a full-time profession. And that's because I spend a lot of time doing things like volunteer work for statewide court committees and committees in Dane County to do things like improve access to behavioral health in our criminal justice system. And, you know, that's not the way Brad Schimmel approaches the job. You know, we probably all worked with somebody like that, you know, first one out of the door at the end of the day.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We have a question now from Laura.
Hi. Hi, thank you so much for being here, Judge Crawford. I really appreciate hearing your perspective and kind of your history with this. I think it's really inspiring to see your candidacy and your approach for this position, since it's so important. And my question has a little bit of a preamble, but I think it's just an important part to state. The SAVE Act, which is expected to come to a vote in the House of Representatives, seeks to severely limit Americans' access to the ballot. And this includes impacts on military and other citizens living abroad, specifically because we'd have to travel back to the US to present proof of citizenship in order to register every election year, which is not something everyone can feasibly do. It's very likely to make it very difficult for us to vote. Additionally, the proposed constitutional amendment in Wisconsin on the April 1st ballot would also put up additional barriers to ballot access for a lot of citizens, including us. And we know you can't comment on upcoming cases, which I understand and appreciate that approach. But we want you just to be aware of these unique challenges facing this special contingent of voters, especially since many stateside officials are not aware of the processes we must go through and the strict requirements we already meet to be able to vote in a way that a lot of times, you know, candidate or constituents that are in Wisconsin don't have the same barriers. You know, there's a lot going on, which makes this election so very important. And that kind of just brings me to the question, considering all those different things and all the cases, everything that's going on, why should Wisconsinites vote specifically for you? And that makes you the best person for the job, recognizing the very difficult circumstances that we're all in with these cases and these laws.
Yeah, well, you know, I think what we're seeing here is that the Trump administration is coming after the right to vote. They are coming after even the very question of citizenship. And you know, people have to stand up for democracy. I think that is, you know, another broad, compelling reason to vote in this election. As I said, my opponent, Brad Schimmel, is tying himself to Elon Musk and the Doge agenda. And, you know, I don't know what promises he made in order to get that money flowing from Elon Musk. But I will say that Brad Schimmel was out in Washington, D.C. During the inauguration, was attending these high dollar galas with rubbing shoulders with people from Turning Point America and other conservative organizations, and came back and was bragging about getting down on his knees, begging for funding from some of those deep-pocketed conservative groups. And right at about the same time, Elon Musk started tweeting about this race. So you can put two and two together and know that Brad Schimmel is not the one who is going to protect Wisconsinites from the extremes of that agenda. Is not going to be one who interprets our Wisconsin Constitution to be a firewall against some of these excesses and unconstitutional actions that we're seeing. So, you know, I think there's a compelling case to make sure that our Wisconsin Supreme Court remains a fair, impartial court that's working to protect Wisconsinites.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Judge Crawford. Do you have time for one or two audience questions?
Let me see, where are we time-wise? Maybe just one more, Annie. I'm going to get on the road pretty quick here.
Okay, well, this is probably a pretty quick one. What is the rationale of Wisconsinites for electing judges to the Supreme Court versus being appointed by the governor? That's sort of an unusual thing for Wisconsin, isn't it?
Well, it's part of our state constitution. That's why we do it this way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that provides more, less politicization of the system, or is it backfiring a bit now with the political involvement?
Well, there are pros and cons either way, is what I would say. I think that there's some advantage in putting the choice to voters. It's democratic, obviously, to let voters choose who they want on their Wisconsin Supreme Court. But it also opens up the door to things like we're seeing right now, the negative campaign ads that are full of untruths and really difficult or impossible to correct in the short time that we have the attention of voters. So it has a lot of pros and cons. It also leads to politicization and like the kind of what's the word for it? Divisiveness, I guess, that we've seen throughout the state in other kinds of elections. But the only other option really is to have an appointment process. And we've seen on the United States Supreme Court that there are downsides to the appointment process as well. We now have U.S. Supreme Court that is dominated by right-wing justices who, as I said, are willing to do things like overturn 50 years of constitutional protection enjoyed by its citizens to advance a political agenda. So I don't think that there is any perfect solution to determining how justices end up on our state Supreme Court or U.S. Supreme Court. But I'm going to count on the voters to make the right choice in this one and make sure that they're putting a judge on the Supreme Court who wants to protect their rights and not a partisan politician who wants to take them away.
Awesome. That's a great way to wrap things up. Thank you so much. We were wondering if you would want to take a picture with our panelist of all women, amazing overseas democracy defenders before you have to leave.
That'd be great.
All right, let's see if we can get that set up real quick. And in the meantime, I'd like to say to the rest of you all attendees, please stick around after our speaker has to go, because we've got some information for you on registering to vote, requesting your ballot, using the backup ballot. And we also can send you to the Zoom room where we can get expert assistance on that. So please stick around. Are you taking the picture, Karen, or am I?
Annie, why don't you go ahead and do it?
Okay. My phone.
Oh, we can do that. I can do that, right?
There you go.
Webinar that she's running. Oh.
This is great. Thanks so much. All right. Best of luck. And
Thanks,
so much
everyone.
for joining us. Have a
My
good
pleasure.
day.
It's great meeting everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. And I'm going to turn this over to Liz to give the information.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you for sticking with us today and for calling in to protect voting rights, to protect common sense policy when it comes to the law, which should be fair, should be impartial. We've got a big battle ahead. So I want to again thank Judge Crawford to her common sense approach to the law, for being our beacon of truth in a sea of dishonesty. And I want to thank Martha McDevitt Pugh for promoting voting rights by being our voice of Wisconsin voting rights abroad. That's no small thing because Wisconsin's a complicated state, as we all know. And on that note, a shout out to everyone here. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for being election heroes, because to you and your friends, your family, your neighbors, your colleagues, everyone you got involved in your community has selflessly given their time to ensure our GOTV efforts run. So you are seen and you are appreciated, especially right now, because this is 10 years we're talking about. And if you think Trump being in office for 4 years is a long time, or the 4 to 5 weeks we've recently been through, as it were, imagine Trump having a lackey responsible for dismantling Wisconsin policy for 10 more years. That is what we face on the ballot April 1st. Nationally, as we discussed, we're worried about the SAVE Act, HR 22, which would disenfranchise 69, 70 million women and people who've changed their birth certificates, disenfranchising people of color, the disabled, and our voters abroad. And more immediately, Wisconsin on our ballot April 1st has a very similar proposed voter suppression bill. Ballot Measure 1 on April 1st seeks to enshrine voter ID laws into our state constitution. So this is a ballot measure that would, directly impact the state constitution, directly impact you voting abroad with voter ID laws. So we encourage you to vote no Wisconsin. And you can use that hashtag when you're sharing messages, hashtag vote no Wisconsin. We're trending and we need your help. Now looking at that voter turnout last April, we saw a significant downturn of both voters abroad and back home. Whereas in August 2024, we saw Democrats turn out and successfully block 2 ballot measures. In November, we weren't as lucky because while we had the turnout, Republicans got really crafty with the language and they snuck in a ballot measure that only our voters abroad in Dane County rejected. So this is what we're seeing again, crafty language. And this is where you come in. We need you to take action. We need you to blast your airwaves at the chapter, the county, and the caucus level. Not just to vote for Susan Crawford, not just to vote in municipal school board and state superintendent elections, but to demand that the state of Wisconsin protect voting rights. So Keeper of the Flames, unite. So please attend our trainings set up by our GOTV team. I'm going to put a link to that in the chat right now. Maybe. There we go. And then that federal write-in absentee ballot, our backup ballot, is especially important for our voters. Right now, this very minute, all Wisconsin voters could use that backup ballot to ensure their ballots get home on time to be counted. Wisconsin ballots only are issued 30 days before the election. Now, 30 days in many of our countries, including mine, is not enough time to use postal mail or the diplomatic pouch. If I waited that 30-day period, I'd have to use courier only. So I wanted you all to know, if registered as a UOCAVA overseas voter correctly using votefromabroad.org, you have the right to vote early. So register using votefromabroad.org and then send that backup ballot now. Wait for your original ballot, and if you have time, definitely send that home too. Now, action time. What can you do? We're looking at that Q&A section. We're looking at your comments in the chat. We need you to become digital warriors. We need you to blast the airwaves on social media and in your internal circles, because we learned that if we're not individually sharing messages, if we're not individually engaging in conversation, we're not reaching new voters or even existing voters who don't know that they can vote. So find Wisconsin Abroad on Facebook and X. Definitely look up our amazing Democrats Abroad and Vote From Abroad team pages for voter announcements. We're on Instagram, we're on Threads, we're on X, Facebook, LinkedIn, I think even Reddit, and we're on Blue Sky. If you're on Blue Sky, we'd love to hear from you. Look up our Democrats Abroad account. Now, other actions that we know you're already doing and we're so excited, our phone banking has started. Our members are making calls to other members across the globe. So we call this our friend banking because they are such friendly calls. We hope you help us finish it. We're in the last leg of it. We think we can even finish them today, but only with your help. Then check out our events page. We've got more things coming at you, including in about 20 minutes, we've got a Zoom the Vote session starting. And so if you or someone you know needs help voting, or if you're a voter assistant ready to help voters, we need you to join us. And that you can easily find by going to votefromabroad.org and clicking through the top. So the link is in the chat, votefromabroad.org, voter support. And as always, we're up all night to get your ballot right. So contact us anytime on your schedule via email. That's help@votefromabroad.org. It is your right to vote. It is your right to enfranchise others. We hope that you take to the airwaves. We hope that you keep coming to our call, and we really hope that you volunteer. We've got an amazing resistance advocacy program going right now. You can learn more about that on our website. We are taking action, not just for Wisconsin, but for across the entire state, our nation, right? And we're going to keep putting those links in the chat. If you look at our volunteer page, you will see a million ways to help, and we hope that you choose one. So right now, while we have you, we've got 20 minutes before that call. Can you make a message to your Wisconsin voters, your friends, your relatives, and post and say, again, in the chat, vote no Wisconsin? You could even use that hashtag Brad is bad. Reminding others, we need to vote for Common Sense Crawford. If you have other ideas, send us an email. We're collecting member feedback. Pardon me while I quickly text that. And we want to hear from you. So vote wisconsin-team@democratsabroad.org. I'm going to turn the floor back over to Annie for final thoughts, but thank you for staying with us. Keepers of the flame, unite. Good night.
No, thank you, Liz. I'm sure that there are still folks on this call who need help with their ballots. So beginning at the top of the hour, please do go to the votefromabroad.org page. At the top, there's a red banner, and you click on that, and it will take you to the page where you can join the Zoom the Vote session, and there will be experts on hand, including some familiar faces from here. And we will be able to help you to request your absentee ballot, answer any questions that you have about eligibility, and just, make sure you understand how to use the write-in ballot and any other questions that you might have. And also, thank you so much for coming today. Thanks for spreading the word about how important this election is. Tell everybody to support Judge Crawford and to vote no on the constitutional amendment. All right. And I think, Martha, if you have anything to add, otherwise we can wrap things up. No, that's it then. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.